Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, hi, hello, my name is Miguel, but some people call me Milo, and today we are going to be reacting to the animated horror series, the channel Animated Horror Flicks, and we reacted to one of his videos a while ago. I believe we reacted to the Snowman, I think it was, and I mentioned that I wanted to come back to this channel because I really liked how he did the animations and everything. So, yeah, for this video, we are going to be doing the pizza delivery part 1 through 3, Alone at the Park, and Who Could Resist. So, we are going to watch these. Once you guys can comment down below if you guys like these types of videos. Maybe I'll react to more of his videos on this channel. I will also link his YouTube in the description box below. Go ahead and give him a like and subscribe along with this video, please. So yeah, this is Nightmare Pizza Delivery Part 1.
I was working the graveyard shift at a local pizza restaurant just outside of town. We had received a last-minute order, literally moments before we were due to close. But my boss would always insist on taking on as many orders as possible, regardless of how late it was. I was chosen to make the last delivery on this particular night because the address was actually on the way to my house, and I was the new guy. I had already made plenty of deliveries before, but I was a little anxious about delivering to this specific address, especially after hearing so many bizarre stories from the other staff members who said that it was a very deserted area and the two guys that lived there were brothers, but no one had ever seen them before. I didn't take their remarks very seriously, since I figured they were probably just trying to scare me. The strangest part was how they always ordered the same pizza, small with no toppings at all. I was following the GPS on my phone as closely as possible. I couldn't afford to get lost, and I was eager to make the delivery as quickly as possible. I arrived at the location according to the GPS, but I found myself in the middle of an extremely deserted road. I guess the staff members weren't joking about that after all. I couldn't see so well through the windows of my car, and my field of view was extremely limited, so I stepped outside to get a better look. I glanced in all directions until I spotted what looked like an old farmhouse just a short distance from the road. There were no signs of a driveway or any other means of getting to the house by car, but I could definitely see that the lights were on. The restaurant had already closed at this point, so there wasn't any way of calling there to confirm if I was in the right address or not. Since it was the only place visible from where I was standing, I decided to grab the pizza and start walking towards the old farmhouse. As I cautiously traversed through the field, I could sense things moving and scuffling about in the surrounding trees, but I assumed it was quite normal considering it was clearly a farmland of some sort. As I approached the house, I observed the shabby exterior and found it hard to imagine how anyone could live there. I knocked on the door, which was then followed by a series of strange loud noises. Then I heard a strange voice.
"Who is it?"
I told him that their pizza had arrived.
"Just leave it on the doorstep."
I guess now I realize what the other guys meant when they told me that no one knew what they looked like. I carefully placed the pizza on the doorstep, while money was fed from beneath the door. I grabbed the money and quickly made my way back to the car, but then stopped halfway. I couldn't shake this overwhelming sense of curiosity. Being asked
I would
to leave
just
the
leave.
pizza on the doorstep instead of actually opening the door like a normal person would do. I had to know why.
I would just
I
leave.
decided to
I wouldn't
hide
care.
and watch to see who would come out to get the pizza. I watched motionless as the door slowly creaked open, revealing a dark silhouette and a pair of large eyes piercing through the murky interior of the house. And then he instantly looked in my direction and saw me. We stared at each other for a few seconds before I looked behind me and saw the lights to my car flashing like crazy. I took one last glance at the old farmhouse and was horrified to see that he now stood well beyond the doorstep. I turned and ran towards my car. After grabbing my keys, I got inside and locked all of the doors as quickly as I could. I started the engine and drove away, swearing this would be the last time I would ever deliver to this address.
I'm sorry if my car
As the
alarm was
rush of what
going off.
happened slowly wore off,
But
I realized I hadn't
stop
stopped to
to
think
check.
what might have caused the car alarm to sound off like that.
Someone getting
But I
in the
was
car.
just too relieved to finally be heading home to think much of it. And I took great comfort in knowing that I would be home very soon.
Oh. See, I told you.
Hey folks, this is just a quick reminder to hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel if you enjoyed this video. I make new scary animated stories every few weeks, so please hit that notification.
See, I told you there's gonna be someone in that back seat. Alright, so this is pizza delivery, or Nightmare Pizza Delivery Part 2.
If you've ever been in a car accident before, then you'll know that it's the terrible silence afterwards that sticks with us. I remembered making a last-minute delivery and then driving home. I knew something terrible had happened and that I had been involved in an accident, but I was so confused and disoriented. I could no longer remember what caused the accident, or the last few minutes leading up to it. Despite being inside the car, I could still feel the cold chill from outside, which was actually a welcome distraction from the sharp pain in my head. I don't know how long I was out for, but the weather seemed different and I could definitely hear rain, so I wasn't in a hurry to exit the vehicle. Naturally, my first impulse was to call for help, but to my surprise, I noticed that my phone wasn't where I was expecting it to be. I checked under the seats, but all I could feel were random scraps of paper. I guess that's what I get for never cleaning out my car. I looked over my shoulder to check the back seat, but this just left me wondering how the seats got wet even though all the doors and windows were closed. As a last resort, I decided to reach for the glove compartment, but then quickly leaned back as I felt the entire car suddenly drift forward. Only after stepping out of the car did I realize it was leaning dangerously over the edge of a bridge. Fortunately, the bridge was a familiar landmark, so I knew exactly where I was, but it also meant that I was still quite far away from home, and definitely too far to walk. I looked around for any clues suggesting what might have caused the accident, which is when I saw the same old farmhouse just beyond the trees, indicating that I had only been driving for a mile or so before the crash. The rain showed no signs of letting up, and I wasn't going to risk getting back inside the car. The bridge didn't serve much of a purpose these days, as it was basically an overpass over an old reservoir that had been drained for years. I figured it would be the best place to wait until another car passed by. I cautiously descended into the abandoned reservoir and proceeded under the bridge for shelter from the pouring rain. It seemed even colder under the bridge, and rainwater was leaking in all directions. My last hope was that another vehicle was bound to show up eventually and notice my car still on the bridge. Doing my best to keep myself warm, I reluctantly waited under the bridge, counting every second that passed. I don't remember exactly how long I had been waiting before I finally heard the sound of a vehicle pulling up on the bridge. After waiting for so long under the cold, wet bridge, I didn't think twice about heading back up to the ground level, which is when I spotted a white van and 2 men standing in the rain. I suddenly got a really bad feeling, and it seemed increasingly unlikely that they were there with the intention of helping me. The whole situation started to make a lot more sense as I recognized the same distinct voice from the farmhouse and began listening in on their conversation.
Alone? I couldn't get a signal on his phone, so I had to get clear of the trees. We need to find him and lock him up with the others back at the house. Check under the bridge.
I knew I only had a split second to act, so I quickly descended back under the bridge, where I was immediately faced with the dilemma of not knowing from which side he was coming from. I slowly peeked around the corner to get a visual, but this was soon followed by an uncanny feeling that I was being watched.
Oh, heck no.
I was terrified to see the same guy from the top of the bridge now standing in front of me just a short distance away. Something I really regret was trying to cross to the other side of the reservoir as I fled, which caused me to stumble and trip over the fallen debris from above.
Oh.
What happened in that fraction of a second played over and over again in my head as I adjusted to the strange twist of fate that would provide me with a means of escape. The danger, however, was far from over, as the other guy then appeared on the bridge staring right down at me. I wasn't going to waste the one shot I had of getting away, so I ran for the trees. I kept on running until it felt like my chest was about to explode. I didn't want him to find me, but I had to stop in order to catch my breath. Somewhere along the way, I remembered the conversation on the bridge. Something about others being locked up. That, along with the fact that my phone and personal details such as my home address had been compromised, I decided to double back to the last place he would look and unveil the truth behind the stories. Once and for all.
You just helped yourself. That's wonderful. Okay, now I am interested. He just helped himself get kidnapped. Ooh, this one's 10 minutes long. Okay. Probably have like a lot of details, I guess. Alright, so this is Nightmare Pizza Delivery Part 3. Ugh, don't want to break.
As I approached the house, I was quite surprised to see that some of the lights were still on. But then again, he most likely left in a hurry and was probably expecting to be back by now. I figured I had at least a good 15 minutes to snoop around the house and get to a phone before he showed up. Fortunately, it had stopped raining, so I chose to scope out the exterior of the house a little longer to find the best point of entry. I decided to sneak around the back of the house since both the garage and the front door were probably locked, and I wanted to see if perhaps there was a more discreet way of getting inside. It was then when I began to wonder why the farm was so deserted. There wasn't a trace of any animals or livestock whatsoever, which was kind of unusual compared to the other farms in the area. As I arrived at the back of the house, I observed a large heavy door that probably led down to the basement. It was definitely the ideal place to hide someone, but judging by the strength of the door and the large padlock securing it, I knew I needed to find another way in. Which is when I noticed a small door just to my right. Even if it were locked, it still didn't seem like the kind of door that would be difficult to break down or unlock from the other side if I found something to break the glass with. As I walked towards the door, I conveniently noticed a flashlight inside a toolbox. My priority at that instant was to find a phone and call the police. I knew there had to be a landline somewhere inside the house,
because it was used to call the pizzeria, and it wasn't a cell phone number. I cautiously shined the flashlight through the glass section of the door, which slowly revealed an old kitchen that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months, maybe longer. I could see another door at the end of the kitchen, which I assume led to the porch or living room. With one gentle push, I realized that the door was unlocked and had been left ajar, causing it to sway open. As I began to contemplate the moral dilemma of breaking into a stranger's house, it was almost too easy at that point. And in the heat of the moment, all I could think of was calling the police and checking the house for anyone that might be trapped inside. I slowly entered the kitchen, trying to make as little noise as possible, which wasn't easy considering how old and creaky the floors were. The kitchen was shrouded in dust, and a foul smell of garbage and rotten meat filled the air. I tried hard not to breathe it in, and as soon as I realized that there was no phone there, I quickly proceeded towards the door at the other end of the kitchen. Which is when I heard a phone ringing. I was relieved but also confused when I realized that the corridor had been completely sealed off with thick wooden panels and that the sound was coming from behind a small door to my left. The ringing stopped almost as if someone had answered it, but it didn't seem likely considering how dark it was and I couldn't hear anyone talking on the phone. I peeped through the small window in the door but couldn't see that much. As the eerie silence persisted, I opened the door and was immediately presented with a narrow flight of stairs descending into the basement. Admittedly, it seemed like an unusual place to keep a phone, and I was still puzzled as to why the corridor had been sealed off, but time was running out and I only needed a minute or two to call the police. I flipped the light switch, but nothing happened. Had it not been for the foul stench coming from the kitchen, I might have thought twice about descending a narrow stairway into a dark basement, but I was already beginning to feel a little more at ease as the rancid odor was quickly negated by a strong smell of fresh paint and construction materials. It looked like the basement had recently been converted into some kind of giant meat locker. There were boxes everywhere and I wasn't all that curious to know what was inside them.
Why do I have
I
a
was
feeling
expecting the basement to be a mess, so you can imagine my surprise when I observed how organized and clean it was, which was a stark contrast to the floor above and most likely to the rest of the house. I was suddenly startled by the sound of the door behind me slamming shut as I felt a cold rush of air sweep through the room. I quickly deduced that it was the draft that had caused it and continued to search the basement. I carefully shined the flashlight across the basement interior until I finally spotted a landline phone mounted to the wall. I rushed over to the phone and quickly dialed 911. I felt a sudden rush of relief as I heard a female voice on the other end of the line. I explained everything that had happened on the bridge and where I was. She told me that the cops were on their way and that I should try to find somewhere safe to hide until they arrived. Sound advice, but it still felt strange looking for some place to hide in somebody else's house. That's when I heard the sound of a truck pulling up outside. It sounded a lot like the same truck from the bridge, as much as I tried to deny it. So I turned off the flashlight and quickly hid between a bunch of boxes, patiently waiting to see if someone would appear behind the door at the top of the stairs. Then to my horror, a shadow appeared through the window in the door. The strangest part was the fact that even after a minute or so, he was still just standing there, completely motionless as I tried to anticipate what he might do next. It was at that moment of intense silence and uncertainty that I observed a large reinforced door on the opposite wall. It didn't seem like the type of door that requires a key, but it definitely looked like it was meant to keep something or someone from getting out. As I contemplated what horrifying secrets could be waiting behind that door, I heard the sound of another door slowly creak open, followed by heavy footsteps descending the stairs. I kept my back to the wall, avoiding any sudden movements as the footsteps got closer and louder, eventually reaching the concrete floor. As I acknowledged the large shadow casting on the wall next to me, I was convinced that he would find me, and my only hope was that the police would show up in the nick of time. Suddenly, I let out a gasp of relief as I heard the footsteps moving away, heading back up the stairs. But just when I thought the worst was over, the phone rang. I had but a split second to react, knowing that if I stayed where I was, he would find me for sure.
There's always the freaking ads. Why?
I managed to quickly unlock and open the large door, carefully timing it with the sound of the phone ringing not to give my presence away. As the door closed, however, everything went silent, suggesting that the room was completely soundproof, lit only by the light from the small window in the door. The fact that I couldn't hear anything made it even worse, knowing that the door could swing open at any moment. Trying hard not to succumb to the isolation or the likelihood that I was trapped, I noticed something strangely familiar. A box at my feet. It was the same box from the pizza I had delivered to the house that very night. I got a strong sense that I wasn't alone in that room, so I turned on the flashlight. As my eyes became accustomed to the light, I could see two girls curled up in the opposite corner staring back at me. It looked like they had been there for some time, and I could tell that they were extremely weak and frightened. Suddenly they both looked to the door in fear as it began to swing open. The only thing that went through my mind at that point was that this was the end, for all of us, but that maybe I could surprise him somehow since he probably wasn't expecting me to be there. But just as I was about to make my move, I noticed the expressions on the girls' faces changed suddenly to something I wasn't expecting. I was initially confused, but then ultimately relieved to see a police officer standing at the door.
Hey, at least they were okay. That's nice. I thought he was gonna help himself get kidnapped for a second. Okay, so this next video is called Alone at the Park. Yeah, it's just called Alone at the Park. I thought this was a sequel, but apparently it's not. So yeah, this is Alone at the Park. I hate parks. Watch, this is gonna be a ghost story.
This happened to me a few years ago. I was in high school at the time, and I would usually get home by going through the local park, not too far away. It probably took longer for me to get home this way, but the alternative was a narrow sidewalk next to a busy road. At least going through the park was peaceful, and I would occasionally bump into some friends on the way. On this particular night, however, the park seemed a lot emptier than usual.
Gonna be a ghost.
Not that I minded walking alone, given that the area was relatively safe and nothing dangerous or even remotely interesting ever really happened around here. As I arrived halfway through the park, I noticed something rather strange. Someone had left some of their things on one of the park benches. At first I thought it was just some trash that someone hadn't bothered to throw away, but as I got closer, I could see that there were in fact belongings, some of which were valuable. Despite what I said about the area being safe, it still seemed like a pretty bad idea to leave things out in the open. My initial conclusion was that perhaps the dog escaped from its leash and the owner ran after it, so I decided to adopt a sense of civic duty by sticking around for a while until someone showed up. After waiting for at least 15 minutes, I started to wonder if anyone was going to show up that night. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen another soul since I entered the park. I decided that I had already waited long enough, and it was getting quite late. I thought about taking the belongings with me, but I didn't want it to look like I was stealing, so I just ignored it and moved on. Then, just as I started walking, I heard something run past me. I heard it again just moments later, and it seemed even louder this time around. Something didn't feel right, and for whatever reason, I just started walking away very fast. I felt instantly relieved as I approached the end of the park, but this feeling turned out to be extremely short-lived as I noticed a large shadow blocking the way to the exit. The vague silhouette suggested large animal features that seemed almost predatory in nature, and I instantly felt threatened by its appearance. It stared back at me with its large eyes as if it were trying to anticipate my next move, yet remained surprisingly still and silent. I wasn't very keen on the idea of closing any more distance between myself and whatever it was that stood in my way, and given an inherent fear of the unknown, I decided to turn around and quickly head back the same way I came. I refrained from running, but only because I thought doing so may provoke it to start chasing after me. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm as I cautiously made my way back. I didn't want to reveal that I was afraid, but I found myself counting every step forward, hoping that I wasn't being followed. I couldn't even bear to look behind me at this point, but it was only moments later when I realized I didn't need to. The same dark silhouette appeared once again, blocking the path ahead of me, this time considerably closer. I slowly backed away without breaking any eye contact with the creature. It seemed content to let me go as I continued to back further and further away, which is when I discovered the true horror of the situation. I was being stalked not by one, but two creatures that were blocking my only means of escape. There was no other way out. Like hungry sharks, they began to circle around me, slowly closing in for the kill. Then suddenly, I heard something in the distance, followed by small, subtle impacts on the ground around me. The sound of the rain appeared to startle them, and they soon ran for cover as it continued to get stronger. I never thought I would be so happy to catch the rain that day, and I was relieved to get home safely.
What is it?
It took me a couple of months to build up the courage to start using the park again after that. The only thing I knew for sure was that getting caught by the rain was the least of my worries.
What? What was it? Was it wolves? I don't think wolves get scared of the rain. What was it? It looked demonic. I thought it was gonna be like a Skinwalker story or something. Alright, so this next or the last video we are going to be watching is Demonic Possession.
Daddy,
Oh,
please
no.
wake up. There's something wrong with Mommy. Daddy, please wake up. Daddy?
What happened?
It was the 1-year anniversary since that night. I know it sounds rather extreme, but I didn't even feel comfortable parking too close to the house. My therapist told me that the best way to deal with the recurring nightmares was to face up to what scares me the most. So here I was, back at that house.
I wouldn't even go near that house ever again. I'm guessing it has something to do with the fire.
I wanted to phone my daughter just so I could hear her voice and make sure she was okay. But the cell phone coverage was always sketchy in that area. In many ways, my daughter had been the stronger one through all of it, even after her mother was taken away. Perhaps it was because she was still shielded from the harsh reality of what really happened, still, just a child in the face of something so terrifying. For a brief second, I almost knocked on the door as if I was expecting someone to be home. That's when it really occurred to me. Home was no longer home anymore, just an empty shell of a house haunted by memories. Maybe coming back wasn't such a good idea. But as I stepped away, I heard the front door creak open slightly.
Nope.
Whether I care to admit it or not, I couldn't deny that
If I
deep
heard
down
that-
I was waiting for a sign that I was doing the right thing. And maybe this was it. Just a
If
hint
I
of encouragement that I needed to get my foot in the
The
door.
front door open.
I
when
could
I'm
already
trying to
sense
leave
the old
by
musky
itself.
smell of a vacant house as I gently pushed the door
Be back.
further open, revealing the staircase and the clutter of toys and unopened mail scattered across the floor. I proceeded upstairs where the nightmare began, still so fresh in my mind, a memory of being woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of my daughter's desperate voice.
Daddy, please wake up.
I asked myself every day, why us? Why our family? And what was she doing in Maddie's room? What my daughter once considered the safest room in the house became a chamber of screams, cursing, things I care not to recollect. Her old room was an uncanny reminder of the
What?
torment and suffering. What was I doing here? What did I really hope to achieve by coming here?
Is that
So many
handcuffs?
questions, yet very few answers. I did my best to keep everything quiet. I even contacted the church, but they weren't willing to get involved without proof of a demonic entity, so she was taken away and labeled with a mental disorder. Where do I go from here? I really can't say. I put the house up for sale not too long ago. Maybe it sells, maybe it doesn't. But I'll never forget the terror of that fateful night at that house.
Daddy,
no?
please wake up. There's something wrong with Mommy.
No. I'm so glad that he does not do jump scares, because I would have died. Wait a minute. In that scene, was there handcuffs on the bed? Or like straps? Huh. Let me see if let me see on what happened. Yeah, there's no explaining it. Like what? It says demonic possession, so I'm guessing it was demonic possession. But I don't like that at all. Anyway, those were the scary animated horror stories. You guys, I will leave his channel in the description box below. You guys go watch him. He is a really good animator, and the horror ones are like awesome. Obviously, as you can tell by that last one, they are really good. But yeah, so comment down below your thoughts on this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down what other videos you guys would like to see. I do vlogs, reaction videos, morning, night routine, cooking, cleaning, gaming, all the above on this channel. Also go over to my other channel, Spirit Before. I do creepypastas. You can submit your own personal paranormal experience, a story you wrote, or a creepypasta you would love to hear. I just like I just love hearing your guys' suggestions. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.